and we'll begin. All right. Welcome everyone to Peace Through Action USA's virtual event, Bound Together, Understanding Book Censorship. I'm happy that you decided to join us tonight. In the chat, please state your name and where you're joining us from. We've had some people do that already, and it looks like we have a great national audience. So we're really excited to see your name and where you're from. Tonight, we will explore the subject of book restrictions and understand how it influences social cohesion and peace building in our communities. We're pleased to share that we have two amazing guest speakers with us tonight who will provide perspective and commentary. We will intersperse opportunities for discussion throughout the evening, and we invite you all to please reserve any questions or commentary for our engaging community Q&A conversation. We'll have a Q&A at the end, so anything that you want to cover, we will definitely budget some time for. So please don't feel that you need to get your questions asked right away. We know that you'll have some questions and some comments, so be ready for that. While our guest speakers will discuss their work in their local areas of Calvert County, Maryland, we are excited to share that we have a national audience with us this evening. We've already got some people from Florida, Tennessee. I've seen some registrations from Oregon. It seems really exciting that we have this cohesive national group here with us tonight. So please feel free to discuss actions or perspectives from your local areas across the country. Part of this experience is to have a variety of perspectives from throughout the US that we can hold up against each other. This is a national issue, and tonight's events will seek to address how local actions are nested within a broader national context. But first, we will review the event arrangements. So I'm just going to read these out here for you. The event will begin at 7 o'clock. So we've already begun. It's also being recorded. So if you just came in and you didn't catch that part, this event is being recorded. So if you're uncomfortable with that, you can turn your camera off. Otherwise, we really do encourage you to have your camera on. It really creates a cohesive and kind of collaborative environment for us in this event. And we really value everyone's presence with us tonight. So feel free to be as present as you'd like. If you do not want to disclose your name, you can always change that. Please type any questions or comments in the chat as well. And speaker view or gallery view is recommended so you can see everybody. Introduce yourself in the chat if you wish, share your name, location, and if there's any kind of affiliated organization that you're with, we'd love to hear that as well, because we often do have partners who collaborate with us in the future after having seen one of our virtual opportunities. So thank you for joining us this evening. Tonight, we will survey the significance of book restrictions and community cohesion, share resources for local initiatives, and share strategies for advocacy, education, and service. We'll explore methods to build and preserve a culture of peace by promoting diverse modes of knowledge production and social understanding. After attending this event, we'll enhance our understanding of this controversial subject and examine the importance of the freedom to read in service of peace, harmony, and justice. But before we dive in, let's take a moment to consider your initial thoughts on book restrictions. So in the chat now, if everyone understands where the chat button is on your Zoom account, it looks like a little thought bubble. Open that up. And before we begin, please share a word or phrase that comes to mind when you hear the term book restrictions or book censorship or book banning. What are just those kind of initial thoughts that that phrase conjures up for you? Would love to see that, and please share in the chat with us now. That will help us kind of gauge where everyone's at surrounding this issue. All right, great. Yeah, so we've got authoritarianism, Fahrenheit 451. It's a great banned book that we've all been familiar with. The Closet, anti-freedom control, fascist, more Fahrenheit 51. Wonderful. Undesirable, limiting, Big Brother. Yes, George Orwell and Ray Bradbury are getting their representation tonight. So wonderful. So it sounds like we all have some degree of familiarity, but I would also like to mention that there may be other emotions that come up. We may encounter different dimensions of our identities as parents, as grandparents, that challenge some of what we may have kind of preconceived notion about. And so I just do want to encourage us all to be okay with that and have some loving kindness towards our full range of human experience. And it might be difficult and challenging at times. And this is a safe container to go through that ordeal. And this is a learning event, which presupposes that you all have something to learn. So please go through the process of doing so tonight. Just a brief session outline. We're going to introduce our speakers, then we'll explore the issue, then discuss the impact of this issue, and then we'll have an opportunity for you all to ask some Q&A conversation and reflection questions, and then we'll kind of probe some deeper questions that may be harder to ask publicly as well. And then we're going to move into closing thoughts and envision some action plans that we can all take in our communities to address this issue. So before we start a discussion, I just want to share a brief introduction to our special list of guest speakers. This evening, we welcome two featured presenters with a wide range of experience and accolades, both on and beyond the bookshelves. Tonight, our presenters include me, Chris Wolonsky. You're probably familiar with me. My pronouns are he, him, his. I'm the Director of Programs and Partnerships for Peace Through Action USA. I am kind of the MC of the evening, but I also have some unique perspective to offer as a former educator who's taught in so many settings, both nationally, internationally, and in both public settings, private school settings, therapeutic boarding schools, also refugee youth group homes. So I'm right in this world of education as well. Also an oral storyteller. So books, literature, all of that is very near and dear to my heart. So I do hope to offer my own personal perspective in doses throughout the evening. But more importantly, we also welcome two of our guest speakers. First, we have Carlos Childs, one of our guest commentators who has done significant work with the ACLU surrounding this issue. And we also welcome Sarah Hall, our second guest commentator, who's an educator and counter-oppressive community organizer. We'll learn more about our guest speakers after we briefly discuss the nature of our work at Peace Through Action USA. So Peace Through Action USA, I've put our mission up here for you. We activate and equip Americans to implement practical, peaceful solutions to aggression and violence in their communities and our country. As the organizational host this evening, we're a national scope organization, so we have an exciting year ahead. So please spread the word to your friends and family about our virtual event series. This is offered for a national audience. While we're anchored in Calvert County, Maryland, this is one of those opportunities where having a national dialogue is really fruitful because it provides a range of different perspectives for us. And so now I'll talk a little bit more about our work in Calvert County, Maryland. First, I'd like to highlight our primary funder, Broadview Church. Their mission is to grow deeper and broader in our spiritual lives while partnering to meet needs in our community. And we're very grateful for Broadview's generous contributions to our work, and they really enable us to do what we do. So just want to celebrate them as well. And the Calvert Peace Project. So if you belong to Calvert County, Maryland, you may have heard of us already. Our mission is to increase understanding, collaboration, and community among youth and adults in Calvert County. We do so by providing a range of civic and social engagement activities with a focus on peace. You can see this in our range of programs, which I'll talk about a bit more at the end of the session. So keep your eyes peeled for that. And if you haven't engaged with us previously, we really encourage you to continue coming to our events and engage with us in the future. So first here we have Carlos Childs. I'll read a little bit of Carlos's bio and then ask a question as well. So Carlos is the Southern Maryland Regional Community Organizer for the ACLU of Maryland. As regional organizer, he has worked on legal justice reform, LGBTQ rights, education policies, and more. His regions cover Charles, Calvert, and Prince George's County in Maryland. Aside from the ACLU of Maryland, Carlos has been a Southern Maryland activist for years, fighting for worker rights and housing justice. I've included Carlos's full bio here for those who are curious, but Carlos, can you please introduce yourself and explain what inspires you to speak with our audience tonight?
Yes, definitely. We did an awesome job. There's not much left for me to say, but yes, my name is Carlos Childs. I'm the Southern Maryland Regional Organizer with the ACLU, and just to kind of keep it brief, um, one of my biggest things for years has just been activism, getting people day to day involved in what goes on, whether it be around criminal justice issues, whether it be around education, LGBTQ, the myriad of problems that we're facing in this not just country but state and counties. To really know that just because we are people and not politicians, we do have power. We have power in numbers to organize ourselves to actually fight oppressive systems and to make structural change throughout time and lasting change as well. And I've just been so glad to be here with you all. Thank you so much to Peace Through Action and to Sarah, who just been amazing, amazing people to work with.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And we're excited to hear more from you throughout the evening. So thank you so much for being with us, Carlos, and for the amazing work you're doing. All right, so now we would like to welcome Sarah Hall, one of our other guest featured commentators this evening, who will share their reflections and lived experiences with us. Sarah Hall, born and raised in Calvert County, has been an activist for peace and justice for over 20 years. She has worked to bring awareness to racial inequality, police brutality, and the marginalization of the LGBTQIA+ people in our community. She is also a visual arts educator, an accomplished graphic artist with clients such as the American Red Cross, AARP, UNICEF, the American Association for Justice, SKD Knickerbocker, PBS, and the Center for Justice and Democracy. I've included Sarah's bio here, but Sarah, can you please introduce yourself to our audience and explain what inspires you to speak with our audience tonight?
Sure, yes. Hi, I'm Sarah Hall, and I'm here tonight because I was lucky enough to grow up in Calvert County public school systems. And the education that I received from librarians, from teachers, has really inspired me to live a life with purpose. And through my graphic design and through my organizing efforts, I hope I can do the educators that brought me up through the system justice. And I hope that I can really reflect the kind of education that I receive through what I give my children.
Thank you so much. That's a wonderful, wonderful intention. So thank you very much for sharing that with us. And thank you for being here and working as an educator. Much appreciation for that very important and frequently difficult work. So next, we invite everyone in the audience to share your personal intentions and goals for this event in the chat. What inspired you to attend this event with us tonight? Is there anything you're hoping to learn? Please share that in the chat. We'll hopefully be able to address that throughout the evening. Our guest speakers will have the opportunity to read that, and if they can offer any commentary to address your thoughts, I'm certain that they will do so to the best of their ability, and I'll try as well. But yeah, just please share just what your intentions are. And next, I just kind of want to open. We'll try to cultivate a sense of gentleness, empathy, and positive effort here. This is a safe container for learning, growth, understanding, and connection. That being said, there are a few things that this session is not. It is not a public debate forum. It is not a political podium, and it is most definitely not a space that tolerates violence or aggression in any form. We do not make the policy for schools or libraries, so any of the discussion here tonight is not about enacting public policy. So I know people can get their hackles up about that, and instead of focusing on policy, we're really instead discussing our national and local predicament. That said, this is a capsule for learning and growth. We acknowledge that everyone came here to learn. So if you encounter challenges along the way, it's okay. That's why we're here. This range of subjects can be hard to talk about. Sometimes we have personal beliefs that complicate our ability to expand our awareness of other people's experiences. So with that understanding, we want to acknowledge that we're the producers of peace And this event tonight is an opportunity for us to cultivate more peaceful communities across the country. And so that also being said, lastly, tonight's discussion is not exhaustive. It's merely intended to provide a small window into a very big issue. And it does not and cannot cover the vast and wide range of dimensions of this issue. But we do hope that in carrying out this event, we can identify some personal, social, and cultural barriers to communication around this issue. And this is a safe container to assess those barriers and work through them. So we're just going to define our terms. So for people who are not familiar with the term book banning or book censorship, I'll just read a kind of quick elevator pitch of what we're dealing with here. The term book banning refers to the practice of prohibiting certain books from being read, purchased, or accessed by the public. This has been happening for a long time, and even today, despite our abundant access to information through digital means, there are many books that face restrictions. So book censorship, book banning can occur in a variety of settings, that usually span the gamut of public enterprises, as in schools or libraries. That's kind of the main focus, but it can extend beyond that. And so I kind of encourage, if you find any spaces where book banning or book censorship also affects your life beyond those two venues, please bring them forward tonight. Next, I'm just going to present a couple numbers here, the issue by the numbers. So the United States is facing an unprecedented wave of school book banning. PEN America, a nonprofit similar to the ACLU, a nonprofit that advocates for freedom of expression, tallied 1,586 book bans in schools over the past 9 months, targeting 1,145 books. The American Library Association tracked 729 attempts to remove library, school, and university materials last year, leading to 1,597 book challenges or removals. For comparison, the association counted challenges or bans of only 273 books in 2020 and 373 in 2019 and 483 in 2018. So that number has significantly climbed. The debate has stretched from school board meetings to the halls of Congress. During Supreme Court confirmation hearings for Ketanji Brown Jackson, Senator Ted Cruz read from Ibram X. Kendi's books, Anti-Racist Baby and Stamped, Racism, Anti-Racism, and You. Cruz insisted that Jackson explain why those books are available at the private school where Jackson serves on the board. The recent challenges fall into several categories. Some of the challenges involve books dealing with race, sexuality, or gender and come from conservatives, but not conservatives alone. Liberals also have challenged classics such as To Kill a Mockingbird and Huckleberry Finn, saying that they use racist language and character stereotypes. Recently, a Tennessee school district removed a book about the Holocaust. So this is also a bipartisan issue. Now we're going to move into an activity. So this, I really encourage everyone to be as collaborative and participatory as possible. So if you would like to put your camera on now, this would be the time. So we're going to judge some books by their covers now. I've put this little quote here for us: "Don't judge a book by its cover till you've read the book," from Jamie Lee Curtis. I think that's just a really wise thought for us to cultivate as we go through this. But I just want to also encourage us, rather than forcing us all to think the exact same way, I want to invite us all to attempt to see both sides or all sides of the issue and then weigh our decision with that wider sense of perspective. So this activity is intended to challenge some of your assumptions, challenge some of maybe the feelings that you have about the issues that these books might be banned because of, or the rationale for their banning. So it's an exercise for us not to water down or dilute our personal beliefs either, but instead it aims to broaden our understanding and widen our empathy, so that we can actually, understand or attempt to understand the thought processes that go into why a book might be banned. and to better understand that issue from all sides. So this is a good container for us to move through some of that. So I'm going to read you some excerpts and summaries and show you some book covers, and then we're going to kind of play a bit of a game here where I will show you a book cover, and I want you to try to, in the chat or verbally would honestly be better, to try to explain why you think that book might be banned. So first we have Gender Queer by Maya Kobabe. If anyone has any assumptions based on the cover, I can read the excerpt here. Why am I like this? Sometimes I feel like my sexuality is broken and my gender is broken. I feel like there are all these wires in my brain, which were supposed to connect body to gender identity and sexuality, but they've all been twisted into a huge snarled mess. Yeah, great. So yeah, we're having some discussion in the chat about sexual explicitness. Claire, I think you just had your microphone on, so we invite you to share.
Thank you. I did read the book, and it was not to the level of what I first expected. I thought it would be more about, I thought it would be more risque, and it was not risque at all. It was just a young man or a person, sorry, who was curious about what their identity was. It never came to any kind of negative climax in, forget the term. It was just a person seeking their identity. And I did not think that, at least at the high school level, that would be a book that would be atrocious or frightening to parents that their child read that at a high school level.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Yeah, thank you for sharing that reflection. Because, Claire's reflection opposes, not to speak for you, Claire, but it kind of opposes why critics have objected to this book, saying that it has been sexually explicit and mentions the sex toys and oral sex, menstrual blood, fantasizing about genitalia and things of this nature. And it was treated as pornographic and banned in some Iowa County schools. So really kind of important to see how these perspectives are all different. Next, we have To Kill a Mockingbird, which I kind of talked about before, but maybe someone could add a potential reflection on why To Kill a Mockingbird might have some challenges in terms of being banned or not.
So
go ahead, Carlos. Go ahead.
No, Sarah, go ahead, please. Oh, you sure? All right, cool. So I would say, and I actually haven't read this book, but you've heard a lot of people talk about To Kill a Mockingbird and other different books that do not just deal with sexuality, may also have links to, as you all said, cultural things, race, things like that. And you see a big push around removing those books. And like you said earlier, it's not specifically maybe the person doesn't or feels like it's too sexually explicit or what they may say. It may be a point of where it just disagrees with their own personal ideology, and they're pushing that on the school system to start saying, all right, because I don't agree with that, I don't feel like anyone's child should be able to access that as well. And what you've seen is a lot of people saying, if you don't want your child to read a certain material, those are conversations for you and your household where you say to your child, hey, when you go to the library, I don't want you to read those type of books, like when you would tell your child, or growing up, when parents tell their children, hey, I don't want you going on these different websites on your phone. They're not saying, hey, no one should have access to these websites in the world.
Yeah, interesting. That's a really great point. And I think in some of that, yeah, really dovetails nicely with some of the discussion that's happening in the chat about age appropriateness and kind of parental, to use a very Florida term, the parental right to select what your child has access to. So yeah, next I'm gonna kind of just quickly move through some books here. This book, New Kid, was really a graphic novel that's about a 12-year-old African-American boy from Washington Heights in Manhattan as he begins 7th grade at the prestigious, wealthy Riverdale Academy Day School. And it's been objected to because it was wrought with critical race theory, and has been completely banned from an independent school district in Texas. Next, we have a book called Mouse, which for most English majors, Mouse is like a just deeply important text about the Holocaust, which is told through a graphic novel means, but it has received objections due to its depiction of violence and suicide. Unfortunately, these are important themes that youth probably should learn about, and I think it kind of implores that question of how much can we sanitize an issue in order to communicate around it effectively.
Is it okay if oh, I'm so
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, of course.
So that was my county. That was what sparked my job as an organizer, was the book ban Mouse. And I just want to add that the extra, the thing that was so awful about that beyond the ban was that our school board did it in violation of their own policy. So they did it without community consent. There wasn't like a conversation about it. We didn't find out until it got leaked to the Tennessee Holler because the minutes got leaked. So that's like another extra aspect of that conversation was like, yes, it was banned and that's terrible. And also there was like no accountability system to like go through the proper process, which is what we were fighting so hard here on the ground. So just wanted to add that in there.
Oh, wow. That is deeply important to acknowledge that, sometimes we have these institutional best practices that we say we'll follow, but when push comes to shove, is that something that we actually execute? And thank you for sharing your personal experience around that. I'm eager to hear more about that as the night goes on. So thank you. 1619, similar experience as far as critical race theory is concerned. People have objected to this book, including former President Donald Trump, surrounding its negative view of American history, kind of asserting that that the protection of the institution of slavery was a prime motivator for the colonists who declared independence from Britain. And this book has been banned in all schools in Florida and Texas, was produced by the New York Times Magazine. So I do want to also kind of address one of the discussions around age appropriateness. And this cover, I think, is kind of important for us to consider. Does this cover kind of register to anybody as alarming? Okay, well, we may have an audience that's not too alarmed, but I think this book might be important to consider, because it does tell the story of a single sex family of male penguins who both sit on an egg and help hatch their child. And so, this discussion around age appropriateness is a worthwhile theme to ask. But that being said, I think we all will have our own kind of where we land on that. And some of this also, I think, probably changes as one is a parent or is not. I know that my sister, being a young mother, has begun to enunciate feelings that I actually can't even relate to, not having a child myself. So I just want to go through these other books briefly here, more kind of critical race questions. Similarly, sex education has been a major theme. So, these are all kind of important, I think, for us to really ask about. How bad is the information being shared? And so now I guess I would like to ask us, based on what we just encountered, are there any main themes that seem to be used as rationale for banning? Are there any kind of main primary issues that seem to be at the forefront of why something might be banned? Yeah, and we have a really vibrant chat going on here. So I'm doing my best to keep up with everybody. But yeah, so it sounds like sex education is a theme. Yeah, sex being inherently shameful. Okay, yeah, sure, I can repeat that. So of the books that I just showed, it seemed that there were some primary themes that stuck out among that list. And while this isn't a fully comprehensive list, it does seem that there are certain themes that are a bit more inflammatory than others in terms of the book banning issue.
At the moment, the focus in Calvert County, where I am, seems to be very much on any sort of sexuality or anything in books. And some of it is graphic sex on one hand, and they are equating everything they want to ban with graphic sex, when there's also non-straight, whatever the right term is, being lumped in with that and saying, oh, well, anything that is not straight, cis, whatever, is sexual, and so is not something our children's eyes should see.
Interesting. Yeah, so kind of like regarding that, like sexualizing that identity of like,
right. Yes.
Yeah, really, really important observation. Thank you for sharing that. And yeah, thank you also for sharing like what you're seeing on the ground in your community. And so if anybody else would kind of like to add to that discussion of maybe things they've seen in their local area, if you're a Calvert resident, we encourage you to share. If not, just as well.
Yeah, I can add to that. I think one thing that I've seen is you have a lot of people taking their personal family decisions that normally you would think of are like in the home, what parents talk about with their kids, and they are trying to broaden it, whether they see that their personal views are not shared by the majority of people, or that their view is not the one that's given priority. Now they're trying to make these decisions for everyone's child, to be able to say no one has access to these books, no one can read certain things, no one has access to it. And I don't think that they may be looking at the consequences that has to students who could be put in harmful situations, not leaving school and not having certain like things brought to their attention, not being introduced to different cultures, things like that as well, which will make it hard for them in the future.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, it does potentially stunt some growth in a way. So yeah, that's a really important facet of all this, is what is the purpose and value of education when it comes down to it. So thank you. So as we are going through these themes, and as we're kind of seeing in the chat, everybody has their own unique kind of where they fall in terms of comfortability around some of these themes. And that's okay. Tonight, that's okay for us to be in a place where we are not fully arriving at consensus together. That's actually quite okay. I do encourage us in our conversations for the rest of the evening and in the chat to be as kind of inclusive and supportive as possible. And one thing we do not tolerate is intolerance. So just want to put that out there as well. But all of these are nested in wider kind of, they're almost like nesting dolls, right? We have our personal feelings, which influences our social embeddedness, and then that kind of guides our motivations toward affecting institutions that serve the collective. So just for everyone to think about, I would like to kind of just prompt you to consider how you reflect on your personal beliefs and how those kind of radiate out beyond you. So how does this issue initiate a ripple effect in your community? That's something that I think is really important for us to consider. We're going to discuss the impact of book banning now, and we're going to see where these things overlap. So let's just take a moment now to discuss these effects. Does anyone have any thoughts that they'd like to share in terms of, you know, a ripple effect in their community that maybe they've witnessed or one that they suspect may be happening? We'll just share real quick.
Oh, you have Liv and Sarah with their
Yeah, go
hand.
ahead, Liv.
Oh, hi. So I think something that we've worked on, the organization I'm part of is called SOCM, and kind of the connecting the dots that we've been doing is how this plays into privatization. So I live in a state that's also has a really big charter school push, a big push against teachers. So, you know, when we think about, okay, Mouse is this book that's bad, and then the teachers who want to teach from it are bad. Well, now we can't trust our teachers. Now we're going to put our kids in a private school. We're going to homeschool them. We're gonna put them in this charter. And then we recently in my town, we also had a ban of our pride display in the same town that banned Mouse, or we're banning a pride display and we're on the news again. So I think it's creating this space that suddenly we can't trust these public spaces. And that natural next step in that privatization authoritarian playbook is to push into private spaces. And in my area particularly, those are private religious spaces, which are great for some people, but like as a public community, not for everybody, right? So I think that's where we're seeing the ripple effect, is that it's starting as a book ban, but it's this much larger conversation of kind of destroying these public spaces like education, and it's hurting everybody. So
Yeah, thank you for sharing. And for our guest speakers, I don't mean to abbreviate my response to you, Liv. Thank you for sharing that. I think that was really like potent for us to consider that there are vested interests who may be actually receiving private money through the charter process and through the privatization of schooling. So that is a whole kind of a big, wider issue that this seemingly smaller issue inhabits. So thank you for kind of peeling the onion for us there. So now I just want to give both of our speakers just a brief moment, about 3 to 5 minutes, to just share in what ways are you working to address the issue of book banning. You know, Carlos and Sarah, we would love to hear what you're actually doing. It sounds like we've heard a little bit from Liv about work that she's doing as well. So if you could just add to that, we would love to hear some strategies that you've been employing.
Definitely. You can go ahead, Sarah.
Oh, okay, thank you, Travis. But yeah, I think a lot of what Liv said really resonated with me, because my main concern now is really how can we support LGBTQ kids in the system and our LGBTQ educators, because they're feeling very, very nervous. I know there's a lot of discussion of, well, it's just sexually explicit content that we're worried about, but the people that are behind a lot of the book banning in Calvert County, at least, I mean, they put their books out there on a website called Behind School Doors, and from the list of books that are on it, it's very clear the intention is to somehow restrict access to books that deal with sexuality, and books that are from the point of view of people of color, and dealing with racism and structural racism. And I was thinking about myself in, you know, Calvert High School in 2001, and a book that I read, Beloved, you know, by Toni Morrison, which deals with the utter brutality, you know, of slavery and murder and all these issues that if I, you know, took one paragraph out of it, I'm sure my father wouldn't have signed a permission slip for me to read it. So, but that book deeply informed how I looked at the world from then on after I read it. And And I really challenge the notion that reading about traumatic events in itself is traumatic to children. Yes, there is age appropriateness when it comes to what books are selected, which is why we trust our librarians, because they are they are educated to have that kind of discernment. And I think when we start to question it kind of is a larger movement in the county too, because, during the height of the pandemic, there was a big effort to remove, the director of the health department. So it's a larger movement of the distrust of democratic institutions and eroding that trust with the public. So, like Liv said, we can then get to a more privatized experience.
Great, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that was awesome. And I'll follow it up by saying, yes, some of the things that we've excuse me, been doing is the one of the biggest things is getting people to show up to these school board meetings when these policies are being discussed, when policies are coming forward, to not just take books out of the school system, but even restrict what books go into the school system. You had a myriad of people in Calvert County show up, and these were civil rights groups, LGBTQ plus groups who all showed up in solidarity and spoke. And that's the biggest thing too, is not just showing up at these school board meetings, but signing up to give public comment, to let them know, hey, this is why me as a resident, or this is why me as a member of a org do not want to see book banning happening, whether it be LGBTQ plus books from black and brown points of view and authors, and myriad more, even just books that feature a sense of community, a sense of society. You see those also being pushed to be banned as well. And it actually goes back to the wonderful points that were made before about this pushed against kind of a community environment and more of this like privatization, isolation point of view. And you see that being pushed more and more and more. One thing I did want to just highlight within the chat was something that M&M posted, that banning one kind of book is often an offshoot of wanting to ban some kind of person. And that's a biggest thing that you see happening, is a lot of the same people who will say, I don't want to see LGBTQ plus books, we don't want to see Black featured books, are the same people who might also say, I don't really care to be around LGBTQ people or Black people or people who don't look and agree with my points of view. And to all of the comments that we've been seeing too, what a big part of this is also knowing that no one here is saying that you should not have the opportunity to parent what goes on in your house with your child by yourselves and your family. The biggest point is your as a term that you said, parental rights that goes around so much, does not go beyond to everyone's child, to where you and your point of view feel like you should be able to police what other kids do and what other parents allow their children to read. It's you and your house and your family. That's where your kind of control ends, and the rest of it is a society. It's going to be things that you may not want your kids to read, that you speak with them and say, hey, even if your friends are doing this, I don't want you doing that.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing both. Thank you both for sharing some of your work. So next, we are going to engage in a Q&A conversation. We're going to try to keep rhetorical questions towards the end. So please do not ask a question that is rhetorical, because really what that question is a statement. So please share your non-rhetorical questions for our speakers. For example, how do I get involved in this issue? What actions can I take? What strategies can I use in my community to discuss this issue? I'll start us off by saying, how do I get involved in this issue?
Yeah, I would say the one main way is to either, one, find an organization that you know of in your area that has been working on anti-book banning policies. I would say, and if you don't, even starting out as simple as going to a school board meeting where they're talking about it, sign up to speak, and then just listen out for who also speaks and who you can view as saying, okay, you also agree that we shouldn't be banning books. And even within yourselves, come together, have like once a week meetings or bi-weekly meetings to say, hey, what can we do? Who can we get to join with us and push these policies, have meetings with school board members and things like that.
Great. Would anyone like to add to our questions here? Feel free to say it out loud. I think that might be easier because we have a really active chat happening right now. So please use your microphone to ask any questions you might have that are not rhetorical and are simply more task or issue oriented.
Yeah, and I would say coming to the Board of Education meetings and talking in person, it far exceeds anything that we can do on Facebook and in chats, because when you're talking face to face with someone, you're going to get, there has to be a sense of empathy. And if we can engage in a civil dialogue, I believe that we can go beyond this hopeless mentality, because I mean, we all have children in the system, or, you know, we're community members. And because I might not agree particularly with your worldview, I mean, I'm not trying to ban books for your children. Do you see what I mean? So that's the part, like Carlos said, that, you know, we should be able to talk these things through. But if we're just unilaterally banning and painting things, then it leaves no room for discussion.
I would like to speak, if that's okay.
Yeah, if you have
if you can hear me. So
yeah,
I did go to the school board meeting. I did go to the last school board meeting and I wasn't treated very nicely. I would like to say, I don't think these books are in effect banned. I don't think some of these books, not all of them that people are listing as contentious, I think should be not available in publicly funded school libraries for children. But some of these books have really sincerely like pornographic lines in them. And I don't understand why people feel this is appropriate material to be in school libraries. I think the focus you are on is you feel like people are trying to ban books about gay families, but really, I think the main concern is the straight up pornography that's in some of these books. It's very upsetting. My child was exposed to it and he was very embarrassed and very upset by it. And when I brought it up at the meeting, I was told that I was a liar. It's very upsetting.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that reflection. And you're right. Like there are times where we do have to read the book. We can't judge just because it falls into the bucket of it being, you know, a racial or a sexual orientation theme that necessarily gets a pass on these other metrics, such as, is this sexually explicit and beyond kind of this parent's comfort level. You know, I think you do bring up a really important consideration that there's multiple facets. And just as our identities are intersectional and we have all these other dimensions about ourselves beyond just these broad categories, it is important to see how some of these overlap and intersect. But I would love to hear some more thoughts if anyone has any commentary around that question.
Yeah, I don't know if Sarah wants to also touch on this one too. I guess what I would say to your point is that definitely I do not want to come across as I'm negating your personal experiences or the experiences of your child. The one thing that I will say is that is where sometimes there will be conversations with your child or with your family to say, hey, these certain books, we would like you not to read them. Or I've even seen in some instances where parents say, hey, when you go to school, if there are books that you want to read, write them down on a list, and we'll come home and we'll both look them up, and then we'll decide if you can check those books out. And that's a way for you and your household to say, hey, I don't want my child reading X, Y, and Z type of books. But
This was the librarian asked the children to research banned books. That's how my child came across this material. It was assigned to him by the librarian.
okay, well that part I can't, I guess, say too much about because I don't know the entirety of that situation, just because it is, or I guess from what you're saying, the librarian told them to look up banned books and then I guess choose from one of the books which one they would like to read. And then, yeah, I think that's a longer kind of conversation.
Yeah, so there's a lot of nuances to it. So thank you for bringing that up. And I mean, it's not a neat and tidy conversation. You know, we are holding the tension of the opposites here. And there are times where there are gray areas and it's hard to read every book on the shelf and know if there's something that's gonna be problematic for us. So yeah, you know, I do just want to extend some empathy to your experience. I'm sorry that you went through that and that your family encountered that experience. Again, we are not librarians. We don't work for the school system or have that kind of agency over that experience for you. But thank you for bringing that forward. So now I'm gonna just challenge us to empathize. So this is an empathy mirror activity. I want you to think back to the books and themes we looked at earlier. What themes majorly activated you? You can really look in the chat and see that there's a degree of themes that are already activating for people. So take stock of how you feel about the issue. I want you to think about someone, you know, I want you to think about, you know, what are your actual core values and how do you express those core values around this issue? And once you've gotten a sense of yourself, I'm prompting you now to think about someone who thinks completely differently from you. The chat has already demonstrated that we have differing opinions. I want you to, everybody, please pause for just a moment and try to entertain the opposing viewpoint. What would they feel about this issue? Why does that person feel that way? What beliefs or intentions do they have about the world that make them feel this way? And this is really just intended to give us that moment of being able to sit at the same table and have a fruitful discussion together.
I'm not sure. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
So, yeah. No, go ahead before we move on.
I just want to sure if you could see it's a few people with their hands raised on the.
Oh, I can't. I actually could not see that. So
no, you're good.
Yeah,
no, you're
if
good.
you have your hands raised, let me see. We've got a few here actually. Again, as far as going back, I don't mean to mute anybody in this conversation, but I do just kind of want to harken back to our core values in establishing this event, that we're all going to create and cultivate a spirit of civility and respect. So this is really not an opportunity to have like a feedback or like a political, this is not like a political stage theater. We have 29 people with us tonight. We value everybody's unique perspective, but also feel that nobody is all that special to rob our collective opportunity to learn. So first, I'll just start with my screen and I see Claire. So Claire, please share your thoughts briefly.
Sorry. I'm going to change the subject just a tiny bit in that I think your chat has gotten totally out of control and it's making folks really uncomfortable. And so maybe temporarily closing that chat so that it doesn't get as ugly as it is, because there's a lot of misinformation going on in that chat room. That's very uncomfortable. And that's not the goal of the Peace Through Action.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for bringing that forward.
I'm sorry. And so I'm
No,
quite
I
out.
appreciate it. I appreciate it. It's okay. I mean, this was partially part of this event was designed because adults have challenges acting like adults sometimes, and that's okay. All right, so Quinn, you're next with your hand raised. Would you like to?
Hi, and I would have my camera. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. I would have my camera on, but I'm out and about in a store, so it doesn't seem very nice. I just wanted to share that, I came in here fairly left-leaning, don't ban my books, but when when it was shared that somebody got a, oh my gosh. Sorry, hang on. I'm so sorry. But when it was shared that a librarian showed a book that felt inappropriate to someone's child, that actually got me thinking about my daughter, and how I would have felt in that situation. So I just wanted to share that that was a good situation for me to feel empathy. Because if my daughter would have come home and been embarrassed, I would have felt pretty, upset too. But I think it's also important to, recognize that even if your kids do see something they're afraid of, what's important is that you can contextualize it for them and show them that they're safe and that they're loved. And if they don't feel comfortable, that they can bring it up to, their parents, and they can come to an agreement on how to handle the situation. But in banning it from the whole school altogether, that's when it starts bringing up more ugly feelings for everyone else too. So I don't know. I'm glad I came to hear everyone's perspectives today. That's
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. I'm happy to hear that your perspective was widened through this conversation. Thank you. And Devaney, you have your hand up as well.
Hi, Chris, thank you so much. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
I wanted to share that I sort of am I do tend to be a loud voice in this space, but to sort of to build on what you and Quinn have said, I do have empathy for people that are not thinking in the exact same way and living in the exact same way as I do. And I'll share an example, but first I'm going to say I don't do that because it's bigotry, right? We can't shut people's voices out. I think discourse is tantamount to healthy democracy, and that's all I'm going to say about politics. But I know what it's like to feel fear, intense fear, where my kids are concerned, right? I have queer kids, and without outing everything that goes on in our home, I've spent some time in the last 5 years thinking about, as a parent, whether or not my kids would be here with me, because excuse me, not because of how we treat them in their home, or not because we don't love Jesus or whatever it is that people think is quote unquote normal, but because of the way the outside world views them. And for me, this is deeply personal. It is the reason I organize. In fact, my family is full of intersectional minorities, and it does affect us in very real ways, very real, very painful, and intense ways. And it dawned on me a couple of years ago, when I was organizing professionally, that what people are feeling is fear. We can have really, really uncomfortable conversations with our children. We can face it head on. We can get therapy. We can openly communicate. We can, make it a safe space for for us, the four of us in our home, and have these hard conversations. And they don't feel good. But it doesn't mean that we should sort of restrict and ban things. That's for me in my home, right? I decide, other people decide what they want to let through and what they do not. But I would say for us in our house, things about things like chattel and things like CRT, which is decades of scholarship and science, and based on a very real thing that goes on in our country to this day that hurts my Black husband in the Air Force, for example. Those things are conversations that not even us in our home are free from, so to speak. So I think I do understand how people feel. They're scared. It's hard. I have a 16-year-old and an 18-year-old. 16-year-olds and 18-year-olds are much harder than toddlers are, which of course I didn't expect. But I empathize in that way. I know what it's like to feel in your bones like your foundations are being shaken and that you can't face it or surmount it. And it seems impossible, and it's painful, and sometimes in our case it changed everything about our life, and our life has never been the same. After what we've been through. Again, not to say too much, but I do empathize. I just don't agree because it hurts the three loves of my life, what's going on right now. And I don't need a better reason than that to stand up and, be a battle axe. And I don't feel sorry for that. I don't feel peaceful when we talk about things like this because it hurts me and mine. But I do understand where other people are coming from. So I hopefully that has given everyone here a little perspective into why I do what I do and why I say what I say. But so that's what I have to say.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And yeah, it's important for us to remember that, when we're talking about the ways these issues overlap, a lot of times that overlaps with our lives very close to home. And sometimes it's difficult because for the people who are wanting to affect policy or move things a different way, they may not share that same experience of having it reach them so intimately. So now we're going to kind of move forward here and share any resources. The chat has been at the current time an opportunity for people to share their opinions, and I'm going to invite us to move beyond that at this point. Please share any resources or community efforts that you've observed in your local area to address these issues. So we really kind of want to prompt everybody to share what resources they've found in their local area, whether that's in Calvert or beyond. Next, I'm going to ask us in just a little bit to complete an event survey. These are really important for us to gauge how our programs are meeting our goals. But I before we get into that, I really just want to mention, a mote of appreciation for everyone being here tonight. This is a difficult conversation. It's a difficult conversation to arrive at in oneself about how we even feel. Sometimes I think as Quinn mentioned, it's like we have feelings around a certain issue that we thought we had that then get confronted when we're talking about this publicly with other people. And that was, just as much as we were hoping for, this kumbaya opportunity for us to sit around the fire together and all reach some utopian sense of consensus and compromise and all arrive at the same understanding and agreement. This is also a great opportunity for us to be in a safe container where, yeah, you know what? Sometimes people disagree and that's okay. We don't all have to necessarily be on the same page together. However, moving forward, we just want to have that sense of civility and respect with each other. And that's really, that the anchor of this is a sense of social cohesion and connection that, yeah, you know what? And this is something I've encountered in my life, living in the South and, having been raised in an Italian family in the Northeast. It's like, living in the South when I was 18 was a big change for me. But, I came to realize that a lot of these people who I never saw myself befriending are actually, we both love throwing a Frisbee for our dog. We both love the taste of chocolate. We both we don't want to see our family get hurt. We want to, be successful in our lives. It's really, there's a lot of root core human. I mean, our sufferings are kind of in a way not simply our own. They're like normalized, right? We have a lot of sufferings in our lives that are actually shared. We have a lot of joys that are shared too, that extend beyond these kind of like finite issues. Not to water down the issue as well, but I just want to remind us of our common humanity. So now in the chat, I'm going to post a link to our survey. So if people could please fill that out, it really helps us gauge the effectiveness of our programming. And as you're filling this out, I'm just going to read some other ways that you can engage with us. So first, you can complete this survey. It helps us determine the effectiveness of our programs. And you can also volunteer with us. You can sign up for our newsletter. You can follow our project on social media, attend speaker and film discussion events such as this one. join virtual events, service projects. We also have youth participation in leadership development groups. We invite you to present your group as well, promote project activities and events, donate event space or project supplies, make a donation of money. These are all ways that you can contribute to our work. And again, this event, such as tonight, I don't want anyone to feel that we have failed because we didn't all just make interpersonal s'mores together and have some wonderful experience. This is really an opportunity for us to look at a hard-hitting issue and chew it together, in community. And so I'm continuing to post the survey here for anyone who's doesn't have it, but please follow that link. It's just the same link over and over that I'm kind of blasting through the chat. But yeah, follow that for us. And then I also invite anyone who is present with us tonight. We'd love to hear your thoughts about tonight's experience and gather your insight for potential future programs in service of peace. So if you have any thoughts about how tonight went and want to give us some suggestions for things that we could change, or things that you really enjoyed about it, or things that caught you by surprise, like I really enjoyed hearing how people's assumptions were kind of smashed and redirected. That's really interesting to hear that feedback, and it helps us design future programs. So thank you so much for including that. And similarly, the Calvert Peace Project is always looking for collaborators. We're eager to connect with anyone in the community who would like to address issues related to peace and interrupting violence and addressing the effects of violence and aggression. So thank you for everybody from Calvert here tonight. We're grateful to have you as well. And
oh, sorry, I actually have a question for you.
Yes.
I was looking at the survey,
yeah.
and it said you learned ways to combat book banning. So I'm just curious if this was to help people come together. It seems like the purpose, when you're putting questions like that in the survey, was really to, I'm going to use your terms, combat book banning. That's very odd. It doesn't seem very neutral to me.
Yeah, so the language in that, I don't believe I use combat, but the thought around that question was for people to address the issue in whatever way that they want to address that issue. So it's not so much saying we are advocating for book banning in Calvert, or we are advocating for the removal of book bans. It's more about how can you address the issue from your scope of influence and where you stand on that issue. That being said, as an organization, we do have values that we encourage and feel it's okay for a nonprofit organization to have certain values that we hold. And so I don't want to sanitize that either, or sterilize, the perspective that we share in that. But by no means was this a ploy to encourage you to think a certain way, or to leave here feeling that you're going to crusade against book banning in your community. It was really more an opportunity for you to explore strategies that you can implement to the extent that you choose. I hope that addressed your...
Actually, no, I think my concern was, so everybody's calling it book banning, but these books technically aren't banned. They're just, I would like for them not to be available in publicly funded school libraries for children, but you're free to purchase them anywhere else. They're technically not banned, but the way the survey was written, it sort of seemed like you had a bias towards one side.
Yeah, I use the term book banning just because that's what's been publicly kind of like, that's kind of the buzzword for it. And thank you for actually bringing that up. That's a really good point. The term book banning does elicit a pretty inflammatory response, and it is in some ways misrepresentative of the issue. Like, we're actually talking about book restrictions. book censorship in some ways. So book banning is a facet of the issue, but it's not encompassing the broad array of issues related to this subject of censorship more broadly. So thank you for bringing that up. But that question actually does apply to that dimension of this wider issue. It's a facet of the diamond. So we have some contact information that you can reach out to us through. We ask you all to create a literary peace pledge. In what ways are you going to work to promote understanding and peace in your community through literature? And that can be a pledge that you have individually or one that you'd like to share publicly with us here in the chat. Feel free. And with that, we'll say thank you for attending our event this evening, and we look forward to seeing you throughout our robust schedule of events, activities, and programs. My contact information here, you can reach out to the Calvert Peace Project through this information, as well as to contact me directly at programs@peacethroughaction.org. Again, I'd also like to thank our speakers tonight, Sarah Hall and Carlos Childs. Thank you so much for your contributions to our conversation. We're so grateful to have you with us tonight. So thank you so much for that. And again, thank you for everyone for your participation. This is a challenging conversation. It's difficult to wrestle with, and it's hard to remove any sense of bias to hold both that tension of the opposites. So thank you for bearing with us throughout that process as we all try to establish some degree of neutrality and understanding and meet each other for a sense of spirit of community and connection. With that, have a great evening, everybody, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Chris. It's
Thank you,
wonderful.
Chris.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Chris. This was really good. This is Kathy.
Thank you. Thank you. It does seem like it's an important discussion.
Yes, I agree.
Despite its discomforting
yes.
experience at times, I think it's good that we have this opportunity to share and discuss these things now, so that when we're at our town hall meetings, we're not making fools of ourselves.
Chris, somebody posted in chat the behindschooldoors.com link.
Yeah.
And when I click it, it tells me it's a suspicious link.
It is.
It's because they
really
did
is,
their
Kathleen.
website registration to hide who they are, though most of us have a good idea who they are. But it's actually a great reading list full of Stonewall Prize readers.
Okay.
Yes, it is a really good reading list.
Well, I'm going to visit this suspicious site.
Okay, well, I'm going to keep my computer virus free, but I look forward to a sanitized email.
Yeah, I'm going to complain if that's what happens.
Awesome.
All right, good night, everyone.
Good night, y'all. Thank you so much again.
Thank you so much.
Again, Chris.
All right, thanks everybody. All right, I'm going to close us out here for those of you who have not left the chat yet. Thank you so much for being with us, and look forward to seeing you again in the future.